This is part 5 of the substitution problem. We're picking up on step 7 if you refer back to our list of 9 steps that we're going to be working through. And so doing the usual quick rehash, we have step 1 is the requirements. Step 2 is the feed composition. Step 3 was to take a look and actually figure out the forage only contribution to nutrients. And then step 4 was to look for deficiencies, of which we found a bunch. Step 5 was to figure out the net gain. And step 6 was to actually fix the problem. And so what we found out from our last slide is that we need 2.64 pounds of dry matter from citrus pulp. And that's where we're going to pick up right now, taking a look at step 7. Whoops, I always seem to do this backwards. Get out of the pin mode. Sorry. You guys gotta like my side commentary, right? Okay, so when we take a look at step 7, that is reformulating to check that we fixed our problem. It's reformulating to check that we fixed our problem, as well as to seeing if by fixing the energy problem, we may have corrected some other feeds. So we're going to work with that basic formula of an amount times the nutrient, which is what we've been doing all along by that nutrient concentration, which is a percentage, to kind of check out how much of each nutrient we're getting. All we're doing is saying, okay, from our pasture, how many pounds of energy, protein, calcium, and phosphorus are we getting? And now from citrus pulp, how many pounds are we getting? So what we first need to do is kind of build a table here. Like we did, this is kind of going back. Step 7 is a lot like step, flipping back to make sure, 3. But now we're going to have 2 feeds. So we have pounds of dry matter that are going to be coming from either the Bahia grass pasture, Bahia grass, or the citrus pulp. And from step 6, we learned that we need 2.64 pounds of dry matter. We know that the sheep requires 6.00 pounds. So by difference, the remaining is going to be our Bermuda grass pasture, because the sheep can only eat 6 pounds. So if 2.6 pounds is coming from citrus pulp, by subtraction, the difference between these two numbers, we learn that we need 3.36 pounds of Bahia grass pasture. So again, just to make sure we're clear here, this is a requirement. It was given. Okay? This we solved for in step 6. So the difference of those two is where we get the pasture. Because if we know we need 2.64 pounds, the remaining part of it from the citrus pulp, the rest of it's going to be pasture. So what we're going to do next, let me erase all that, is we need to figure out how many pounds of TDN now we're getting from each one of these. So just as a refresher, this is going to be the amount times the percent nutrient. Okay? So we're going to take the amount, which is, as an example here, the 3.36 pounds of Bahia grass dry matter, times the nutrient concentration of 0.54, 54% TDN. That will give us 1.81 pounds of TDN. Then, let me find my eraser. Oh yeah, I have an eraser. Sorry, that's the little things. So then the next step is to do the same thing for the citrus pulp. To take that 2.64 from right here and actually multiply it times 0.79, the 79% of TDN we have. And that's going to give us 2.09. If we add these two up, we find out that we have 3.90 pounds of TDN. If we go back and check that with the requirement table, we find that that meets our TDN needs, and which it should because we just solved for that. So the next step is to check for crude protein and how many pounds of protein we're getting from each feed. We're going to do that exactly the same way. And so when we take the amount of dry matter, which is right here, times the percent nutrient, just like we did in our formula before, what we find out is that the 3.36 times the percent protein of Bahia grass, which was, I'm referring back to my little chart, which you guys should be too, which is 9%. What we find out is that we wind up with 0.30 pounds of protein, and from the citrus pulp, because it's a small amount of protein as well, we get 0.15. In total, we wind up with 0.45 pounds of protein. And so when we do that and we compare it to the requirement for protein, which was 0.78, we find out that we are still deficient protein. We are still deficient 0.33 pounds. So we are going to have to fix a protein deficiency. So we fixed our energy, but what we find is that we still have a protein problem. Now, we also have to check the amount of calcium and phosphorus. So what we're going to do is carry this problem over to another slide. And when we have that Bahia grass in pounds of dry matter, sorry, that's hard to read, citrus pulp, and we had 3.36 pounds of dry matter and 2.64 from the citrus pulp for our total of 6 pounds. That's just carrying forward our basic information from this slide. Then we're going to figure out how many pounds of calcium that we have. We're carrying all this out because we have to check our 2 minerals as well. So if we take the amount times remember we're still working with that amount times the nutrient hit a wrong button. That nutrient concentration, then we're still working with the weight times the percentage. What we find out, if you refer back to your table for the calcium values of the pasture and the citrus pulp, we find out that we have 0.015 pounds of calcium and 0.034. If we total it up, we find that we have 0.049, and that's pounds of calcium, and that sheep only requires 0.46. Or I'm sorry, I read that wrong. 0.30. So we have an excess. And you know what? That is okay. We're going to call that okay. So we don't have to worry about our calcium supply anymore. So both energy and calcium are fixed at this point. So next, if we check our phosphorus, what we find out is that we have 0.007 coming from the Bahia grass and 0.003 coming from the citrus pulp, and that gives us 0.010 pounds. It's a really tiny amount. A sheep doesn't require a whole lot of phosphorus, and they require 0.017, so guess what? We're still deficient. And so we are still going to have to be concerned about phosphorus. But what we're going to try to do is fix our protein next, and hoping that our protein is going to fix if we're fixing protein, we'll fix the phosphorus. So now we're going to move on to step 8. And step 8 is checking for other deficiencies, which we kind of just did. And then if we need to, we're going to be repeating steps as I think it's steps 5 through 7. So we know that we are deficient 0. Making sure I have my numbers right, 33 pounds of crude protein. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to be adding in is cottonseed meal, because if you look at our table that we referred to at the beginning of each video, cottonseed meal is our protein source. So we have to check our net gain. So we're going to be repeating the net gain step right now. Meaning, if we do a pound for pound substitution of pasture, 1 pound of dry matter from pasture, from the Bahia grass, and we have remember, pretend these are the same, the 1 pound from the cottonseed meal. Okay, we know that Bahia grass pasture for protein, we're working with crude protein right now. That Bahia grass pasture is only 0.09 pounds of protein, and that cottonseed meal is almost half, 0.47 pounds. And so when we evaluate it from a net gain difference, if we draw a line across here and a line there, this area is that net gain. And so remember, the net gain is the difference. So when we take 0.47 minus 0.09, we get a net gain of 0.38. Okay, so that is the net gain that we're going to need to correct the deficiency. So when we talk about correcting the deficiency, this is a repeat, I believe, of step 6. Our deficiency was 0.33. Our net gain was 0.38. When we divide that need by the concentration, that's where we get that we need 0.87 pounds of dry matter from cottonseed meal. So now we're adding in a third feed. Okay, so now our diet is going to contain Bahia grass pasture, citrus pulp for some energy. We're going to also add in some cottonseed meal to fix the protein. So now we have 3 ingredients in our ration. So we need to do step 7 over and reformulate it and check it and see if by fixing protein we've now fixed our mineral needs. So let's take a quick look at how we do that. So we're going to take, actually, you know what? I'm going to pause this video here and we will pick up in another one because this one is getting a little bit long for YouTube. So we're going to do the last video. We'll be checking our minerals, fixing mineral needs if we need them, and doing the final step 9 of the problem.